Hi, I'm Carlise Bethel, and you're listening to Chasing Dreams with Amy J.
Welcome to Chasing Dreams podcast with Amy J. Amy believes that realizing a life without regrets is achieved by taking chances, chasing your dreams, making moves, and overcoming your doubts. The Chasing Dreams podcast will help you overcome life's obstacles, believe in your potential, and inspire you to face your fears. And now here's the woman who is passionately pursuing her dreams, Amy J.
Hey Dream Chasers, this is Amy J, and you are listening to Chasing Dreams, episode 85. And with me today is a special guest, a special friend. I'm so excited. It's a blast from the past, she is. And this is actually the first time we have talked in over, what did we decide? Like 15 years, I think is actually true. 15.
Sounds about right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Her name is Dr. Carlise Bethel. She is the first African-American to graduate from UMBC with a Ph.D. in molecular and cell biology. She is a member of the 6th class of Meyerhoff scholars and received a Meyerhoff graduate fellowship to begin her graduate studies. Dr. Bethel received a pre-doctoral fellowship award from the National Cancer Institute and was recognized as a minority scholar in cancer research by the Association for Advancement in Cancer Research. She completed a postdoctoral fellowship in the Department of Pathology at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Her research focused on the development of clinically relevant rodent prostate cancer models. She is currently a science instructor at Dr. Henry A. Wise Jr. High School in Prince George's County of the lovely Maryland. She teaches biology and 2 courses in the Academy of Health Professions pathway. This is currently her 5th year teaching. She's married with a teenager daughter and son. And, given that busy life she has, she's still come onto the show. And hey, Carlise, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm just so excited. And I know Jamie is a little envious right now because, I get to talk to you.
Hi, Jamie.
So guys, a little background. Carlise was my counselor when I first got to college. We have a program,
Wow.
right? I know.
Yeah,
I'm bringing it
right.
back. There's a program with Meyerhoff that is called Summer Bridge, and it's like a pathway, a bridge, if you will, between high school and college. And Carlise was one of my wonderful counselors, and I haven't talked to her in over 15 years, but I've kept up with you. I mean, I know, I saw you when you were doing your graduate studies. God bless Facebook, right? For those kinds of things.
Right. Uh-huh.
But we haven't had a chance to outreach and catch up.
Right, exactly.
And you have been doing so many things. I mean, you're a teacher now, but we're going to go back to your college years, and while Meyerhoff Scholars Program is focused on math and science, you're very familiar with that. Was that something you've always wanted to do, or is that something you grew into, math and science?
So I'm one of those people that I got hooked on science very early on. And I think the life-changing point was when I got a microscope for one of my not my birthday, I think it was a Christmas gift when I was in elementary school. And I remember actually going outside to get some water from a puddle to look for little organisms underneath the microscope. And so that was kind of the first moment that I realized that I love science. And then I was in middle school, and we were dissecting frogs, and I was just over the moon. It was the most amazing experience. I was like, this is what I want to do. So for me, it was always science. Math was kind of a close second. But science, biology, you name it, I was there. And I think when I got to high school, that's when I told everybody I wanted to be a veterinarian. And for me, it was just, I loved animals, or so I thought I loved all animals. Later on, I figured out cows and horses weren't my thing, so I changed my mind later on.
I was going to say, I don't even know how you figured that out, but okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll get to the turning point for that decision, because there was something that happened during a summer internship that changed my mind. But for all of my high school years, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I was headed to college in Notre Dame of Maryland. That was my first choice, and then I got accepted into UMBC, and then got invited for the Meyerhoff Scholarship Program, and I thought, oh, this is a perfect fit. And it's funny because when I interviewed for the scholarship, I discussed using a flashlight to train goldfish to respond to the flashlight at feeding time, which was my senior research project, because I had gone to Oxon Hill High School, which is also in Prince George's County, so I'm kind of back home now. And I was a science and tech student, and so we had this year-long research project that we had to do. And so that was kind of my claim to fame, was the goldfish project. And each summer, you're encouraged to do summer internships. And so I did one that was specifically for students who thought they wanted to be veterinarians. And we got to act like we were in veterinary school. We had grand rounds in the clinic. We got to rotate through different departments. And that summer, I was standing next to a horse. And I saw exactly how tall the horse was and how big the horse was and how little I was. And we had a couple of cows come in. And they told us how we had to reach into the cow with the glove that goes all the way up your arm. And I was like, oh, my gosh, no way. And they said, before you can specialize, this is what you have to do. I was like, I'm not doing that. And so about junior years when I changed my mind and realized, oh, my gosh, I can't go to vet school. And I kind of went through this, I won't say depression, but it was a very dark period because it seemed like everybody knew what they wanted to do except for me. And so everybody else was applying to medical school or they're applying to graduate school. It's my senior year and I have no plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a developmental biology class with Dr. Charles Beaver, who eventually became my Ph.D. advisor. And that class changed my life because all the things that I had learned, up until that point of my major, it seemed like it all came together in developmental biology, and it was awesome. So he said one day, I have space in my lab. If you're interested, please drop by if you, think you want to volunteer in the lab. And I ran right over and volunteered. And I had the flexible schedule because I had taken most of my classes, so I could spend almost every day in the lab. And it was awesome. And so that first summer that I was able to do summer research, that was the first group of Meyerhoffs that I was counselor for, which was actually the M9. So I was counselor 2 years in a row. So M9s were first, and then, Amy, your class, the 10s, were my second class.
Two hands, no more, no less.
Right. The most awesome class, right?
That's right.
And so while I was counselor, I was working in the lab that summer. So that's when I decided, okay, well, if I'm doing all this work in the lab, I actually have my own project. Why not start your Ph.D. career? And that's what led me into the Ph.D. program at UMBC. So I just stayed there. And then I found out they had the Meyerhoff graduate program. So I became a Meyerhoff grad so I could continue my work and still be on the same lovely campus that I love so much. And I didn't know it at the time, but I would, complete my research there, but I would also get married and have 2 kids during graduate school, which was an anomaly at that time. Many people had come through the department at that time to have kids, so I was one of the first couple of people to have kids in graduate school in our department. It seems like after I got pregnant, a lot of other people started having kids too.
Well, we did talk about the water. I remember.
Yeah. They would say, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything in her lab because you'll get pregnant. So we had a lot of jokes about it, but it was a pretty awesome time. But, yeah, a lot of switching gears and trying to figure out, what was next.
Can I go back to a moment you said about a dark period? And you didn't want to call it a depression, but I know a lot of people, myself included, go through that kind of period where you're not sure what's happening. Like everything up to what you've done must have been a mistake because you don't know what's going on or what to do. And thankfully, things worked out for you. But what was your, if you don't mind talking about it, what was your state of mind in the sense of how does it begin? Because sometimes I think people get surprised by it or overwhelmed, and maybe hearing something about it could help them identify it.
I think I remember specifically, I had a physics exam because, so this was third year, so I was taking, I think it was comparative animal physiology. You had that class, the lecture, and then you had the lab. And then we had to take physics, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I was in calculus 2. Wasn't required for my major, but that's what I did, and I was in there with a couple of my other mathematician besties and some engineering folks. It's like, why am I in this class? And I remember we were getting the series in calculus 2, and everybody was getting it except for me. And I was just like, really? And I found myself being able to focus more on the animal physiology class, but physics and Calc 2 were getting away from me. And I had a physics exam, and I'll never forget, I stayed up, all night because that's what we do, studying, and I overslept. And I had to take my physics exam. I had to beg the instructor to take the physics exam in his office.
So you missed the exam entirely?
I missed the exam entirely.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, man, what is happening? And I remember, at that time, you still call your mom, and it's like, Mom, I don't know what's going on, and I'm crying on the phone, and she was like, you'll figure this out. This is just what happens. You have to make a shift. You have a change that you have to make, and you have to figure it out. And nobody can tell you what it is you're supposed to do. You just have to kind of work it through and go through it. And I remember we had the fine arts building, and I used to take piano lessons when I was in high school. And so I would go to the fine arts building and find one of the piano rooms and go play piano. And so some of the dark period was spent going back to some things that I remember I enjoyed doing. And just reconnecting myself to the things outside of my academics. Like, have fun again. And then the other thing was realizing there's other options other than vet school. Like, you had been on autopilot, like a robot, just saying, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And then I had the experience of seeing what it actually was. And I realized, that's not what I want to do. And I think we have to take each experience. Some things will tell you what, you should go for, but a lot of experiences tell you what you don't want. And those are just as valuable as the things that tell us what we do want. And I think I had to just look at it as this is the period to try things. So just keep trying things until something sticks. And what ended up happening my first year being counselor, I didn't do so well in organic chemistry, so I retook it because I got a C the first time, or I took a pass-fail. So I wanted to get a B or better. So I retook it over the summer, and I was summer bridge counselor. So I did a lot better in organic chemistry, and I took it all by itself. And it was like, wow, it made a huge difference just pulling it out of the context of the semester. And it wasn't that I couldn't do it. It just, there were so many other things going on, too, that I couldn't handle it all. And there's nothing wrong with realizing this is too much for me. So I think it was kind of one of those things where you just had to take it one day at a time, literally. And my mom always says, break things up. Don't try to attack it all at once. Just do a chunk here, do a chunk there. And so I spent that, I think it was the spring semester, going through this lull and trying to figure it out. But by the time I came back in the fall after the summer, I had retaken organic chemistry. I had gotten a better grade. I felt better. And then I landed in developmental biology. And it was like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah, sometimes it just has to come at its own pace, right?
Right. And I learned a patience that I never had before, because it wasn't a thing where, this was over in a week or this was over in a month. No, it took 6 to 7 months before I figured out. And then when I got in the lab, that's when all the light bulbs went off. It was so much fun. And then I could walk to the lab on the weekends. I could set up experiments and come in. I had keys,
That's how you know you like it.
Really cool.
On the weekend.
Yeah. Or I finished classes for the day, so I was in the lab. And my advisor, he would say, she's here. She, you have a certain work ethic when you work in research that you want to be there. So I kept showing up and I kept learning things. And it was just like a lot of positive reinforcement. So when I decided to go to graduate school, I was kind of on a research high, and I was excited about it. And I think for me, it was the fit. And when I looked back and realized, okay, well, I started here, and now look how I feel about things. So that was really my first go at trying something new and making a transition, and it being a long-suffering period. And little did I know that would be the first of several periods of long suffering.
Now, so that's
along
interesting.
My career path.
You've actually had to go through that again?
Oh yeah, yep.
I mean, was it the same, or was it just second verse same as the first?
It not exactly the same, slightly different, because you're at a different point. So my next transition, I would say, was probably about 3 years into graduate school. I had already defended my proposal, so I was back and forth between UMBC and completing some research at Hopkins, and I was pregnant. And I remember being out for maternity leave. I actually took 3 months off, and I came back, and I tried to come back at full steam, couldn't do it. And I figured, well, if I'm coming back, and I planned it so I would come back in the summertime, thinking that was, the best time to do it. And I remember packing my daughter up. She's in the car seat. I'm ready to leave the house. And I called my doctor, and I said, I can't do it. And he's like, just take a breather. You need a break. Just slow down. And so I took a little more time off, and I didn't come in, all day, every day for a couple of weeks. I might have been a half day. And if I could do more than that, then I did. And I kind of eased myself back in it. And I spent some time wondering, can I finish this thing? Should I stick with it? And I learned, too, to reach out. And I think that's when I started building the mentor network that I was going to need for the postdoc step. And I started talking to individuals, and they would share, what they struggled with. And I think when you start reaching out and connecting with people and relating to people what you're going through, it makes it easier. It makes it so you're not so isolated and you don't feel so alone. So learning to come out of that, and you're not supposed to stay by yourself, but to reach out and realize that, everybody does this. At some point in your career, you're going to have a lull. At some point, you're going to feel like, is this the right thing? And then after that got over with, it was a couple more years, and then I was ready to graduate. And I didn't realize, too, that's the hardest part of finishing the Ph.D. is right before graduation. So I went through another, almost like giving birth. You have to get up the energy, and there's so much required of you just to finish.
That last step is the hardest, right?
Right. And at that point, I was on kid number 2, so I'd had my son. And so, now there's 2 of them, and so having to balance, husband working full time, I'm commuting to Baltimore at that point. It was a lot, but we got it done, I had a lot of help from my parents and my sisters and his family, my husband's family. So a lot of support went into me finishing my degree. And I think at that point, you've been through enough where you just start kind of building up this toolbox of things that you can go back to when things don't always pan out, or when you feel like you're, kind of stalled in your career. That you remember you did this, remember you did that, remember you reached out and talked to so-and-so, so maybe you need to go back to them, or, maybe you need to get back to the things you love. Are you playing piano? I roller skate. So some of this was me going back to the roller skating rink, just things that keep you grounded and keep you connected. And I think, that just kind of over time, the more you go through it, I won't say the better you get at it, because the challenges are always different, but you kind of recognize when it's coming, and you recognize that it won't last forever. You'll get out of it.
Now, you were saying it's not necessarily that it's better, but given that you kind of knew how you handled it previously, right? With the support
Right.
system, with what you were doing.
Yep.
Do you think that, does that come back to you though? Or does it take a little bit before you realize, oh, that's right, I did this before, what do I do?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like sometimes you recognize, oh, I know this is it. Sometimes there's certain signals that, cue you. And then other times it just kind of blindsides you. I think for me, the next transition was going from postdoc to teaching and realizing that, okay, in order for me to teach, I had a mentor tell me, he said, you're going to have to take some time off. You're going to have to completely let go of all the things you've been doing up till now before you transition into another career. And at first I was like, what is he talking about? I got to keep working,
Yeah, you're trained for that.
Paycheck. Yeah. And it literally took from April of, I think it was 2012, my postdoctoral funding ran out, and I stopped working at Hopkins for my postdoc, and then I didn't start teacher training until the following year, the summer of 2013, and I became a long-term substitute in January of 2013. So it was almost a year before I really got solidified in my next career path.
Now, can I ask a question about that, your next career path? Because, when people go for a PhD, right, it's usually you do your postdoc and then you get a big job at a research company and you do these things. Did you always want to do high school teaching?
I haven't really thought about it. I remember someone mentioning to me when I was at the veterinary medicine program, they said, you make a good teacher. And I kind of filed it away oh, okay, that's nice. But I remember always working with students in the lab and really enjoying that, like high school and college undergraduates coming in. And then I worked really closely with a graduate student when I was in Hopkins. And I just always enjoyed that experience and kind of missed it. So any chance I could get to interact with students, any chance I could get to speak to students, I would take it. And so I would say over time I started to see, I really like schools. I like being in a school. And I would take my kids to school and enjoy taking them there. And it was really pretty cool. And I was like, I could just stay here all day,
And you've been doing it now for 5 years. And are you where you want to be? Or do you think that there's another transition for you now?
I'm so used to transitions. I'm sure there's another one coming. Right now, I'm involved in writing the new curriculum. So we've adopted a new set of science standards called Next Generation Science Standards. Mm-hmm. And so we need to revamp our curriculum. So I'm involved with curriculum writing. And this will be the second year that I've served as a curriculum writer. Last year we did microbiology. And I just thought, it's so cool to think of how you would actually deliver the material to your students, what activities you're going to do, the order in which you're going to do things, the options that you provide for people in the classroom to use, and really putting yourself in the shoes of the instructor and what you want your students to get out of it and how to write those documents. And to me, that's kind of it's a painful process. Any form of writing is, but it also makes you a sharper instructor because you clearly have those standards in mind and you know what needs to come out of it. And then you're just building your toolkit in terms of what you can do with your students, on a day-to-day basis. So that has really piqued my interest, and I'm kind of, super excited, overexcited maybe, about, getting more into that in addition to the day-to-day stuff. So we'll see where it goes. But like I said, I'm so used to being in a certain pattern for a few years, and then, okay, something else came along. So I wouldn't be surprised if
and it seems to come and find
direction.
You. Right, and it seems to come and find you. It's not like you're actively looking for it. It just, for even what you're doing now, when you're in school, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe other people think differently, but I just assumed that the books appeared. I just assumed that teachers had a magic curriculum I didn't know that there were people who actually worked on it.
Right.
And that's crazy to me, because when it's like a peek behind the curtain, if you will.
Right.
With that. And the fact that you're doing it and you've done it now, is it the second year, or you just did two different subjects?
Two different subjects, and I would say, it's working on the second year.
That's amazing. And is that for your school, or is that like on a larger scale?
So that's for the county. That's actually for the county. Yeah.
Did you volunteer?
So we do
wait. Did you volunteer? Because you probably volunteered.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew it.
I did. Yeah.
That's so you.
Somebody says, "Hey, I'm looking for such and such, and I need a teacher's ball." Yep, that's me. And it's funny because I work with another teacher really closely, Dr. Terry Dove, and I'm going to pass her name along to you too. But we're both career changers, and so she's been like my teacher buddy. And so she'll get, word of some opportunity and say, "Hey, Bethel, look at this." And it's really kind of cool to have, somebody who's looking out for you in that regard. And also kind of keeping their ear to the ground, too, to find, different ways for you to express your teacher-y-ness, if you will.
I'm sorry, teacher-y-ness?
Just one of those words. It's like, I'm feeling teacher-y today. Yeah. When you really enjoy, that you get those teachable moments. I call it being teacher-y. Had a very teacher-y day today.
Did you now? A teacher-y day. Wonder if I could throw that into the episode title somehow. A teacher.
Some days it's just, it's crazy, but most days I would say I have moments in the classroom where I go, wow, this is just, I'm having too much fun. It's hard. But at the same time, when you see your students get something, when you see them excited about it and asking questions, and you had a plan, but because they, took it and ran with it, you guys are all the way around the world again, and they walk out saying, "Oh, we had fun today." That's teachery.
So that's an awesome example. In general terms, can you expand upon that? Like, what's an example of something that you were working on, you were teaching, that subject-wise even, that kind of hit your students?
Okay. So I had this elaborate activity planned for the immune system, and I teach the Academy of Health Professions track students, and so we are looking at different health professions, and we also look at body systems, so it's a lot of anatomy, physiology, and then healthcare. And they were looking at the immune system, and we're trying to learn the different types of cells in the immune system, and it's one of the most complicated systems. So for my students, they had biology freshman year, so some of them are in AP biology, some of them are in chemistry. So you got to find a way to kind of bring them all together on the same page. And I gave them index cards. I found this little diagram of different cells and how they're related. So all of the white blood cells, the neutrophils, the eosinophils, all the words they love to hate to try to pronounce, but I make them say it anyway. And I cut out the picture of the cell, and I gave them an index card, and I told them everybody in the room has a cell, and they have to figure out what that cell does and how it's related to the other cells, and then we're going to act it out. So I'm thinking I'm going to get this, dramatic presentation, and the students started reading out their definitions of what the cells were and what they did, and then they started talking to each other. And they said, well, that sounds like it's related to my cell because, this one interacts with those cells or sends signals to those cells. And so they started having this conversation instead of this elaborate production or acting out that I was envisioning. So then I pulled the screen up that was in front of my whiteboard, and I said, come on up, and we're going to draw this out. And they spent 45 minutes, each one of them, it was about 3 or 4 students, taking turns, writing the names of the cells and their functions and how they were related to them. So everybody would draw arrows from one cell to the next and what they did. And so instead of this performance, now we have this kind of roadmap of the relationships between these cells on the board. And I will tell you, it is still on my board today. I told them to take a picture, and we posted it on our little Google Classroom site. And so this is their reference for all the different cells. And so each class, they did this about 2 weeks ago. So we've been referencing the same diagram on the board for 2 weeks. And every time a question comes up, I say, well, what did you draw? And I'll pull up the screen and show them. And they go, oh, yeah, now I remember. And so now I can give them a review. I could give them a quiz. And because of that exercise, that took way too long and didn't look anything like what I wanted it to look like. But now they have this resource that they made themselves.
And it sounds like it has a lasting impact, too.
Right. And so they said, well, let's go back to the picture, and then I can shuffle the cards and hand out the cards to different students now. That wasn't the one you started with, but now you know what that particular cell does.
Oh, you got to share that photo. We'd love to see that.
Yeah. So they made it their own. They took it from me, changed it, we modified it, and now it's their own. And so instead of me telling them and standing and lecturing and saying, this is what this cell does and blah, 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 no, they found it. They figured it out. They mapped it out. They made mistakes. They corrected each other. They debated. And, they have a deeper understanding of it, which to me, that's, you can't plan on that. You have to develop the culture in your classroom for that to take place so that they feel free to make mistakes. They feel free to volunteer to go up and draw on the board. They feel comfortable to talk to each other about it and work it through.
To your credit, you allowed it.
Right.
You could have just stuck with it. No, guys, that's not the intent. That's not the purpose. I need Shakespeare in front of me. That's not what's happening right now. Yep. But I'm not sure you would have had this kind of impact on them if you had allowed that to continue.
Right, exactly. Yep. And I literally just sat down. I sat down and just watched them go, and being comfortable with that and understanding, too, they have to own the learning. And when you let them do that, those are the best moments in the classroom when they are doing the work.
Yeah, I always enjoy whether the people do the work, but in this case, case, because I think you've always had some kind of natural teaching to you. You were my counselor when I was 16, 17, something like that. Mm-hmm. You leave an impact when you're like one of the first people we interact with, right? Going into college. Mm-hmm. We're still moldable minds, if you will. And, I remember, one, you taught me spades. Two, that it's a scary time. Summer Bridge is, absolutely a bridge, but you take these courses which are college level. Right. College level courses, which can easily stress you out. And I know and remember we've had a few nights where you and Tia and, the other counselors would sit us down and be like, are you okay? And just, check on us and help us at the same time. And so, it's not surprising to me that you're teaching today. I can see that. Back then I probably didn't realize what that meant, but I can see that looking back, it fits with you. But the fact that, that you went through the transitions you did to get to that point, that's the part I think for me is surprising. Because honestly, you don't know a person's journey, right?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And I think too many of us put our assumptions and thoughts on people. Right. So, when you were talking about the dark place you had gone and how you've gone through it a few times, even, and probably wouldn't be surprised if it happened again. I think we all go through that in some way, shape, or form with that. But I think your experiences have led you to be understanding or empathetic, might be the word, for students. Right. Because of that. And it's interesting with student. What grade are your kids in school?
So I actually have 9th through 12th. that I teach.
Yeah, so you got the gamut.
Yep.
You're not just a teacher, but you're a role model or a resource for them as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So this isn't, these transitions, these dark periods, this isn't something that's limited to when you're an adult, right?
No, I don't think so at all. And honestly, I think the earlier you go through, that sorting out period, I think the better, because you do know when it's happening, or you recognize it for what it is. I think for me, mine was a little bit late breaking because I had always kind of known what I thought I wanted to do. But everybody, hits that transition at different times. And I think too, when you make big, huge shifts in your thinking or, in your path or careers or whatever it is, it's growing pains. You're going to go through, and hit the wall or have to shift gears and do certain things in a big way to get through them. So I definitely can relate, especially when I think being in the environment at UMBC with so many people who are so smart and doing so well.
Sure.
And you feel that pressure that, well, am I supposed to be doing this too? And, what am I, where am I going? And having to sort that out in the midst of everybody else where it looks like they all have it figured out. And maybe they don't. But, still being able to navigate your space and figure out this works for me, but this doesn't work for me. And, you know.
It's interesting because, most of the people listening are usually probably college or older, but I think sometimes recognizing that it happens to us at an early age for our kids or our friends' kids or people in our life. I mean, when I remember one of the first, I think it was the first semester of college, I think it was Chem 101, and I enjoyed it. I loved Chem 101,
Ooh, did you? Oh, gosh.
Well, I mean, I went through transitions in college.
Right.
Chemical engineering was the initial major before it changed. And I was like, okay, this is great. This makes sense. I was helping others, tutoring others.
All right.
First exam comes and I get a B. And I'm like, what? No, was it a B? No, I got a C. It was like my first C in life. And I was like, what is this? And people I was tutoring had gotten A's and B's. And I'm like, and, I was very happy for them. Don't get me wrong, guys. I was very happy for them. But I thought the world had ended. I was like, I'm going for chemical engineering, which obviously I didn't. But at the time I was. And I was freaking out. And I remember calling my parents, and my dad was like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I got a C on this paper. And I studied my butt off. I mean, I was teaching people. Right. I was like, so you knew.
Right.
But
wow.
I was like, it's over. College is not for me. Clearly, I needed to stay at the high school level where I was doing well with my A's. And, I just remember my dad and Doc had said the same thing, and he always did. And Mr. T would say the same thing as well. Did you study as hard as you could? And I was like, yes. I was like, well, then be happy, be proud of your C. Right. You did, if you can say that you did your very, very, very best.
Right.
Then okay.
Right.
But at the time though, it's very hard to rectify. I see what they're saying now.
Did I really do my best?
Right. I was like, but how is it I could teach people, but I couldn't do? And And I think we have to get through those moments, and we have those mini dark periods or dark periods, so that we can kind of learn something. Because for me, it was probably testing.
Right. Yeah.
But we all have those moments where we freak out very, very easily, and have those moments. But it's interesting that it can happen over and over again, more than just once.
Right. Right. And it might have to, because it's like, okay, you didn't get the point the first time. Let's keep trying. And honestly, I think too, for me, realizing I don't always learn the same way for every subject.
Oh, that's great.
So learning to modify how you approach things. Okay, if it's biology, this is how I can approach it. I can read a biology textbook cover to cover.
Nope.
Love it. Awesome.
Nope.
Any other topic? No way. different approach. Might have to watch a couple videos. Might have to take notes, flashcards. Might need to make outline. I might need to have somebody teach it to me. And learning, to me, that over the years, what I've gotten, not just from my students, but from myself, is it's really an art in trying to figure out what works for you and when it works for you. And that thing about, did you do your best, and being honest with yourself? Because sometimes I didn't do my best. I didn't do everything that I probably should have. Now, some things you have to figure that out and what that is. What is your best? And so I think during the times of transition, I figured out what is my best. What am I best at? There's a lot of things that weren't working, but what am I really good at? You get to focus on that too.
Yeah. And I think listening to your periods of transition, I took my first computer course that summer, and you know how you felt about developmental biology? That's how I felt about computer science. Wow. And I realized, okay, so it's not chemistry, it's computers.
Right.
And I think we have to go through that. But, in that moment, there's any young person listening, in that moment, you may not understand it.
Right.
But there's a reason.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
And sometimes you may never get the reason.
That too.
Right. It's accepting that you may never get the reason.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Carly,
I've had people ask me, they're like, would you ever go back to research? And I was like, absolutely.
Well, see, and that was going to be my other question is, would you go back and change anything, or go back and redo or restart?
I don't think I would. No, I wouldn't go back and redo anything how I did it. I think for me, I was really satisfied with what I did. And when I stopped being satisfied with it, I changed. So I don't regret, the path. I think it was funny because I always feel like everything in my life, it's always a lot at one time. And so I'm capable of handling a lot at once. And everybody, some people that just, it doesn't work for them, but there are those of us that it can be a lot going on and we seem to just figure it out piece by piece, and we're almost at our best when there's a ton of different things going on. I look at weeks where, look at the schedule, what's going on and where's this going? And then I look back on the week like, yeah, we rocked it, it's over. All right, on to the next, couple of big things. So, no, I wouldn't change a thing. Like I said, I don't feel like there's anything in my life that if I wanted to go back to, I could. I don't feel like I have to do something and move on and never return. If I want to go back to it, it's still going to be there. And so I still keep up, with the research to some degree. I still read papers and get the table of contents from different journals in my email. And when I find something, I even pass it on to my students. Like the last project, it was like, find some research in the immune system that's going on right now. And they found the coolest stuff. Things like the food you eat causes inflammation. It was just amazing what they came up with. And we just have wonderful discussions. So I get to use what I learned as a researcher in the classroom almost every day. You can multitask, you can organize, you can switch gears and scrap it and do something else. If this isn't working, so let's try this. All those skills I learned in the lab. So it's the same thing in the classroom. Just now there's real people there.
One of the things that we ask, and if your students are listening, it's probably something you would tell them. What is one action you would have a dream chaser do? Someone who's trying to figure out or do something that they love.
I would say do something with it every day. I tell my students when they're trying to master a concept or study for a test, I say, if you look at it 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day, when you get to the test, you've done most of your studying already. And anything you really want to be good at or committed to, you have to pick it up every day. I think when you touch it every day, when you think about it, when you interact with it, it just becomes more real. It becomes a part of you. It's a habit. And so if you really, really love it, stick with it and find a way to do something with it every day. And, if it's writing, sometimes you just sit and stare into space and then all of a sudden something comes out of nowhere. But as long as you're doing something with it every day and not neglecting it or skipping it, and expecting it to be at the same spot where you left it, 3 days down there. No, get something in every single day that's related to whatever your dream is. And I don't see how that approach, can keep you from getting to where you want to go if you do something with your dream every day.
Boom. Drop mic. Carlise, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing your story. I love it. I love it. You rock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's inspiring for me. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you.
And guys, that was my friend Carlise Bethel, and I love her. She is fantastic. When she talks about transitions and the times you go through, dark times or quiet times, and trying to figure it out, listen to it. Don't dismiss it. Don't ignore it. But, think about it and get help, get support, and you'll get through it. That's the important thing. Just like she did, and just like she did more than once. Okay, we all go through that. I went through that myself. My sister's gone through it. Friends have gone through it. You're not the first person that is going through it, and you won't be the last. Okay, but I will assure you, if you get help and support, you'll be fine. Okay, so you guys can find all the notes and all the links that are mentioned in the show on the show notes page over at chasingdreamshq.com/episode 85. That's episode 85. Till next time, Dream Chasers, keep chasing.
Thank you so much for listening to Chasing Dreams. Amy would love to connect with you and hear all about your pursuit of chasing your dreams. Connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram via @ChasingDreamsHQ. Or you can find Amy on Twitter @AmyJ21. That's AIMEEJ21. Be sure to visit headquarters over at ChasingDreamsHQ.com for more inspiration, motivation, and resources to help with your own dream chase. We hope you'll join Amy next week, and until then, keep chasing.